What if a promise you made to a complete stranger, a commitment that seemed like a minor inconvenience at the time, was actually the only thing keeping them from letting go of their life? We often underestimate the weight of our words. We give our word easily, and sometimes we break it just as quickly, thinking a small pledge doesn't carry much weight. But in a world where so many people feel invisible, a kept pledge can be a lifeline. Pull up a chair. Let me tell you the story of Henry, an old watchmaker in a small town called Cedar Hollow, Ohio, and a freezing winter night when a simple ticking pocket watch saved a young man's future. Henry was 72 years old, and he was the last watchmaker in our little town. His shop, Henry's Timepieces, sat on the corner of Main and Elm. It was a cozy room that smelled of old wood, brass polish, and machine oil. Hundreds of clocks hung on the walls, their steady ticking creating a heartbeat that filled the quiet shop. Henry was a man of absolute routine. He woke up at 6, opened the shop at 8, and closed at exactly 5 o'clock. He was meticulous, patient, and quiet. He lived alone now, his wife having passed away a few years prior, and his workbench was his sanctuary. It was a cold, bitter Tuesday evening in January, and the wind was howling outside, blowing snow against the glass window of the front door. Henry was packing up his tools, ready to lock up and head home to a quiet dinner. He had his coat on and was reaching for the light switch when the front door chimed. A young man, barely in his 20s, stepped inside. He was shivering, his face pale from the freezing wind. He wore a thin denim jacket that offered little protection against the Ohio winter. In his hands, he clutched a small velvet bag. Henry looked at the clock on the wall. It was 5:05. Normally, Henry would politely tell the young man that the shop was closed and to return tomorrow. But he saw the desperation in the kid's eyes, a look of someone who had hit a wall and had nowhere else to turn. The young man said, "I know you're closing, sir, but please, I need your help." His name was Daniel. He was leaving Cedar Hollow the next morning at 6 o'clock on a bus to Chicago, hoping to start a new job. He had already bought his bus ticket, and he placed a silver pocket watch on the glass counter. Henry noticed the pocket watch was missing its chain, having nothing but a worn, frayed leather fob attached to the bow. Daniel said, "It's my grandfather's. It's an Elgin pocket watch, a classic American timepiece from the 1940s. It stopped ticking this morning. It's the only thing I have left of him. I can't leave for Chicago without it. I just can't. Can you fix it tonight?" Henry picked up the timepiece. It was an impressive piece of machinery, but it was in rough shape. He opened the back casing and peered through his magnifying lens. The mainspring was snapped, the gear train was clogged with decades of dirt, and the balance wheel was completely frozen. Henry sighed, shaking his head. "Son, this isn't a quick fix. To do this right, it needs a complete overhaul. It'll take hours of delicate work. I don't even know if I have a replacement mainspring that fits this specific caliber in my inventory. I'm slammed with older orders, and my eyes are too tired for this kind of detail tonight. You'll have to leave it and let me mail it to you." Daniel's face fell, and he looked like he had been hit by a ton of bricks. "I don't have a permanent address in Chicago yet. I don't even know if I'll get the job. I was hoping for a sign. If the watch doesn't tick, maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I should just stay here and give up." There was a heavy, suffocating silence in the shop. Henry looked at the broken watch, and then at the young man's worn-out boots. He saw a soul on the edge, craving some hope. Henry made a decision. He decided to bite the bullet. "All right, Daniel," Henry said softly. "I'll give you my promise. I will stay here tonight and work on this timepiece. I promise you it will be ticking when you show up at the bus station tomorrow morning. I'll bring it to you myself at 5:30. "You promise?" Daniel asked. "I give you my word," Henry said. "And in my shop, a man's word is the real deal." Daniel thanked him, paid for the repair with what little cash he had left, and walked back out into the snow. Henry locked the door behind him, turned on his desk lamp, and sat down at his workbench. He dismantled the timepiece piece by piece. Tiny screws, delicate gears and springs lay on his green felt mat. He spent 2 hours cleaning the parts, removing decades of old oil. At 9 o'clock, he began searching through his storage drawers for a compatible mainspring. It was a needle in a haystack. He searched through dozens of vintage parts boxes, his eyes straining under the lens. His hands were cramping, and his back was stiff from hours of leaning over the bench. Finally, at midnight, he found one. It was a perfect match. But as he tried to wind the new spring into the barrel, his fingers slipped. The tiny new spring shot out, landing somewhere on the cluttered floor, disappearing into the shadows under his workbench. Henry groaned, dropping his head onto his workbench. He was too old for this. He felt weary, shivering in the drafty room, and completely alone. He felt like giving up. He thought about closing up, going home to sleep, and simply refunding Daniel's money at the station. After all, Daniel was just a kid he'd never met. He would understand that the timepiece was too old to fix. Nobody would blame Henry for failing. But then he remembered the look in Daniel's eyes. He remembered his word. "A promise is a promise, Henry," he muttered to himself. He got down on his knees with a flashlight, searching the dusty floorboards. It took him 40 minutes, but he finally found the spring. He sat back at his bench, took a deep breath to steady his hands, and went to work. He carefully inserted the spring, aligned the balance wheel, and replaced the train of wheels. It was tedious, painstaking work. Around 3 in the morning, his eyes were burning, and he hit a wall of exhaustion. He made a quick cup of instant coffee using the small kettle in his back room, drinking it hot and black to stay awake. The balance wheel shivered, swung back and forth, and then it began to swing steadily. A quiet, rhythmic ticking filled the silent workshop. Sometime in the early morning hours, the howling wind had finally quieted, and the snow had stopped falling. Henry smiled, a wave of relief washing over him. It seemed simple in theory, but it was a monumental struggle in reality. He polished the silver case, wrapped it in a clean cloth, and put it in his pocket. At 5:25, Henry walked out of his shop, leaving the streets of Cedar Hollow silent and covered in a thick blanket of white. The air was freezing, biting at his cheeks. He walked the 3 blocks to the small bus station on Main Street. Inside, the station was drafty and lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. Daniel was sitting on a plastic bench, his suitcase at his feet, looking anxious and tired. Henry walked over and stood in front of him. He didn't make a speech. He just reached into his pocket, pulled out the wrapped pocket watch, and handed it to Daniel. Daniel unwrapped the cloth. He held the silver timepiece to his ear. The steady, rapid ticking was clear and strong. Daniel closed his eyes, and a single tear rolled down his cheek. He looked at Henry, his voice thick with emotion. "You actually did it. You stayed up all night for me." "I kept my promise, Daniel," Henry said gently. "A promise to someone you don't know is still a promise. Now get on that bus. Go build your future." Daniel nodded, hugged the old watchmaker, and boarded the bus. Henry watched the taillights of the bus disappear into the early morning darkness. Henry walked home through the silent, snow-covered streets. He was weary, but for the first time since his wife had passed, he didn't feel lonely. 15 years passed. Henry became too frail to run the shop. He sold Henry's timepieces and moved into a small retirement cottage. The days were long and quiet. He often sat by the window watching the rain, wondering if his life had left any lasting mark on the world. He felt like he had just been a spectator in a world that was moving too fast. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, a delivery driver knocked on his door. He handed Henry a small wooden box. Henry opened it. Inside, resting on a bed of velvet, was a brand new, polished silver watch chain. Underneath the chain was a handwritten letter. Henry put on his glasses and began to read. "Dear Henry, 15 years ago, I walked into your shop a broken kid. I was leaving for Chicago because I had no other choice, but I had decided that if my grandfather's timepiece couldn't be fixed, it was a sign that I should give up on my life. I was going to let the cold take me. When you showed up at the bus station in the freezing cold with that timepiece ticking, it hit me like a ton of bricks. You didn't know me. I was just a face in the crowd, but you stayed up all night, straining your eyes and cramping your hands, just to keep a promise. Your kept word gave me the courage to keep going. I got the job. I worked hard. Today, I am the manager of a construction firm. I have a beautiful wife and a 5-year-old son. His name is Henry. I wanted to send you this chain to remind you that your promise didn't just fix a timepiece. It saved a life. Thank you, Henry. With gratitude, Daniel." Henry held the letter to his chest. Tears filled his old eyes. He looked out the window at the grey sky. He realized that we don't always need to do grand, famous things to make a difference. The promises we keep, the small acts of unseen virtue we show to others when nobody is watching, can ripple out and save a soul. My friends, a promise is not just words. It is a bond of trust. Are you holding a promise on the back burner? Have you made a promise to someone, or even to yourself, that you've let slide because it became inconvenient? Bite the bullet. Keep that promise, because you never know when your word might be the only thing keeping someone from falling apart. I'm Grandpa Ben, and this has been Grandpa Ben's Story Hour. Thank you for sitting with me today. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and join our storytelling family. Until next time, keep your word and take care of yourselves.